When we think of religious knowledge, our minds often go to memorizing ancient texts and just deferring to authority. But what if the source text itself is calling for something totally different, something way more active, a kind of relentless investigation? Let's dive into that.
So right off the bat, you can see these two competing ideas. On one hand, there's this view of knowledge that's really built on memorization and looking to scholars for the final word. And, in that view, asking too many questions can sometimes be seen as a sign of shaky faith. Now, of course, that's a bit of a simplification. Islamic scholarship is incredibly diverse. But when you go straight to the source text, a very different picture emerges. One that champions active inquiry, observing the world around you, and actually testing claims. This is the central puzzle we're going to try and unpack today.
To really get a handle on this, we have to start with the language itself. The Quran's original Arabic has these really powerful ideas baked right into the very words it uses for thinking and for reason. Okay, so take a look at this. The word for intellect, AQL, its literal root meaning is to bind. How cool is that? So true intellect isn't just about having a bunch of random thoughts floating around. It's the power that binds different observations together to create a solid, coherent understanding. It also means to restrain your impulses, right? To think clearly and rationally instead of just reacting emotionally.
Then you have this word tadabbur. This is basically a command to think deeply. The root literally means to go behind something. So this isn't about a quick surface-level read. It's an instruction to dig deep, to investigate the consequences of an idea, to figure out what's really going on behind the scenes. It's a call for some serious intellectual deep diving.
All right, so with that linguistic groundwork laid, let's see how these ideas actually get put into practice. The Quran points us to two huge, parallel sources of knowledge that it says we have to investigate: the divine revelation and the natural world itself.
This verse right here, it's like a powerful mission statement for anyone seeking knowledge. It's a promise that evidence, will be shown in two key places. Notice it doesn't say you'll just be told, it says you'll be shown the evidence so that the truth becomes crystal clear for yourself. And this slide just breaks down those two domains perfectly. The horizons, that's everything outside of us, the cosmos, biology, physics, you name it. And the self, that's the entire universe inside of us, our psychology, our consciousness, what makes us tick. The Quran is saying that both the universe out there and our own minds are essential fields of study.
Now this is a real game changer. The Quran literally puts itself on the table for inspection. It's an open invitation to analyze it critically, to test it, to see if it holds up. The argument being made is that truth has nothing to fear from investigation. This isn't asking for blind acceptance, it's demanding intellectual engagement.
Okay, so we've looked at the language and we've seen these direct calls to go out and investigate. So now we can start to piece all of this together into a clear framework. What does real knowledge actually look like based on these principles? Well, before we build up the framework, the text gives us this incredibly sharp warning about what knowledge is not. It uses this unforgettable metaphor. Someone who has sacred books but doesn't understand them or live by them is like a donkey carrying a load of books. Think about it. The donkey feels the weight, the burden, but gets zero benefit from the wisdom in those books. The point is so clear. Knowledge without understanding and action is totally worthless. So this is the four-part model that starts to emerge. First, knowledge has to be active. It's not about just passively receiving information, it's about getting out there and asking questions. Second, it's verifiable. You're actually encouraged to test claims, to look for evidence. Third, it has to be applied. Knowledge that just sits in your head and doesn't change how you live, well, that's the donkey with the books. And finally, real knowledge is humble. It gets that it doesn't have all the answers and is always open to learning more.
And that brings us to our final section, the personal test. This is great in theory, but how do we actually apply these ideas to our own lives? Well, it seems the Quran sets up a kind of self-reflection through some really pointed questions.
The first one is so direct, and maybe more relevant today than ever. Do you investigate before you accept something as true? In an age of endless headlines and misinformation, this is crucial. The text commands people to verify information. So, do we just go with what feels right or confirms what we already believe? Or do we genuinely try to find clarity before we make up our minds?
The second question is all about avoiding being that donkey carrying books. Is the knowledge you gain just an intellectual hobby, a bunch of facts you collect, or does it actually transform your behavior, your character, your actions in the world? Because real knowledge, according to this framework, should have real consequences in your life.
And finally, this might be the ultimate test of intellectual humility. In a world that just loves confident certainty, can you admit the limits of your own understanding? Can you actually say the words, "I don't know"? Because true knowledge really begins the moment you recognize what you don't know. The most brilliant scholars are often the very first to say, I'm not sure. I need to look into that more.
We'll end on this prayer that the Qur'an teaches its own messenger to say. And think about what it's asking. It's not a prayer for completion, like, "My Lord, let me know everything." It's a prayer for continuation. It completely reframes knowledge not as some destination you arrive at, but as this infinite, essential, and deeply human journey. A journey that, maybe, we are all invited to take.